Hello everyone, welcome to my series on A2019 programming, and today's topic is some tips and tricks on how to use recorder capture in different use cases. A2019, as you might know, has been renamed to Automation 360. We call it Automation 360 now. So the video title says both Automation 360 and A2019 going forward. Now, for the purpose of this particular session, we are going to use some third-party websites. The first website that I'm going to show you is the currency converter from Markets Insider, and the other website that I picked up is this download speed test from the sumihita.com domain. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to use our capture command under recorder package, and we choose the application currency converter, and we capture the object, this button over here. Okay, now the entire use case basically is to click on the button over here. This will expand this drop down which has a text box on top, and we are going to enter the currency over here. So that's the source currency from which we're going to convert it to the target currency, right? So the source currency, let's say, is euro. I'm going to click on this and select euro over here. Okay, so first of all, it cannot be same on both sides, so we need to change the, let's just keep it something on the A, with starting from A, and we are going to select euro over here. Click on this, and we are going to select United States over here. Click on this. So that's the use case, right? And after that, we can now put the value over here, and we can convert the value to get the result right here. But as of now, the use case, that what challenge that we are going to discuss, is based on just these two buttons. So let me just go back to the code, and let's just, instead of doing a record capture, let me just go for a start recording. Okay, and before doing that, let me just change both the values to something different. Okay, and we go for the currency converter page and go for universal recorder, and we click on the button, click on the text box, type euro over here and select this. Then we click on this button and click on this text box, type United States over here, and then select this, and we finish our recording. So let's just see the objects that have come out. Now the first object that we have is a link or HTML. Okay, so we are just going to keep only the required fields and remove everything else. I'm just going to remove all these things, and I'm going to go for a click action. Now the second is a set text operation on a text box, right? So once again, I'm just going to keep the input and XPath and just remove the remaining fields. Those are not required. And I'm going to do a set text of euro, and I'm going to put some delay, right? So this delay is basically after every keystroke, I'm just trying to put some delay. So let's just put some delay of 100 milliseconds. Okay, and then this is the list view that's getting clicked. So we have once again XPath, and I'm going to remove the other fields, and this is a left click operation. Similarly, I'm going to do the same thing for the next button. Keep the tag and XPath, that's fine. Remove this, remove this, remove this, and that's a click operation. Come to the set text operation again, just reduce the fields to the least field combination which is required for our operation to complete. Do a set text, and let's put some delay over here. While we enter the keystroke, let's put some delay of 100 milliseconds. Now at the end, we have the left click, so take care of the fields, and that's the left click. Now let's save this and try to run this. Let me just go back to the currency converter website and bring it back to something different, and run the code. Okay, so the bot is completed. You see that this still says Afghanistan, this still says Albania. So the currencies of Euro and United States didn't actually come, right? So, and if you see here, unable to find list view search criteria did not match, line number 3. So let's look at that. Okay, so since the text was never set, right? We never did this set text. Okay, it's still showing Afghanistan over here. So the set text operation never happened, right? But it still did not give an error message. And that's why, since the set text did not happen, the left click operation could not find a particular item to click on, right? That's why that failed. Okay, so why the set text did not happen? Now let's just go back to our website, bring it to the original state. Okay, it still says Afghanistan and Albania, so that's fine. And instead of this delay, I'll just put 0. Okay, same I'm going to do for the other text box. Okay, let's just leave this one. I've just put this as 0, and so there is basically no delay between the keystrokes, right? Now let's try to run this and see. Okay, so what just happened? You see that the first button operation was completed successfully. It clicked on the button, it entered euro, it clicked on the euro, and the euro got selected. But the second one still did not work. And why is that? Now let's bring it back to the original one, Afghanistan and Albania, and let's just go back to our code. And if we remember, we did that set text, we just removed the delay operation, right? So let's come to this set text operation and let's remove the delay over here, make it 0. And now let's run the code again. And you see that both the buttons got clicked, both the values got entered, and both the items got selected. It says Euro and United States in these two buttons. So why did that happen? Why didn't it happen the first time, and why did it happen now? Now what happens is, when the button gets captured, when the button gets actually worked on by the tool, it gets scrolled up, right? So whenever a particular control is accessed by the tool, it gets scrolled up to the top of the page, right? And in this case, this website has a banner, it has a kind of a header over here that remains constant, and everything goes behind that. So whenever a particular control, or a text box, in this case this text box is the one that we're trying to talk about, so whenever this text box goes behind the banner, which is not visible, right, that is not accessible from a visibility perspective, right, in those cases we need to do a set text operation without putting a delay. There should not be any delay in the set text operation. I am not talking about the wait for control delay, I am talking about the keystroke delay right here. The same goes for this set text operation right here. So if we put a delay, if at all we put a delay of, let's say, 100 seconds, then in those cases the text box should be visible. It should not be under a certain banner, it should not be out of the screen boundaries. It should be visible right here. Okay, for example, a login and password prompt is always visible at the center of the screen, right? So that's where you can use a delay. But if something is not visible, it has gone out of bounds, right, of the screen limit, or it's behind a certain control, in those cases the keystroke delay should be avoided. Okay, so that's the first tip. Now let's go for the second use case. Let me just remove all these things. Okay, the second use case is a download speed test. It basically downloads your basically checks your speed based on I think best of 5 attempts, or I think average of 5 attempts. So anyway, the use case is basically we are just going to click on this run test button, and the moment we click on that, the testing starts, and the run test button is basically not visible to us, right? And once the test is completed, the run test button is visible again. The use case is basically to wait for the run test to be visible again and then grab this value out of this section. So let's do it manually first. We click on the run test and the button is now no longer visible, and you can see that there's animation going on, and you can see the value that is getting calculated over here. So it's doing a best of 5 attempt calculation, so it's trying to calculate my download speed. So let's see. Okay, so I'm not sure why it's so bad, but then again, that's the download speed that it's giving me, right? And now if you see, the button is visible again. So that's the use case. We're going to wait for the button to be visible, and then okay, we check the speed, right? So let's go back to our code, and this time let's just do a recorder capture, and let me just refresh the window to bring back the original state, and we select this test download speed and capture this run test button. Okay, and just go with the input and DOM XPath, and you can just remove everything else. The action can be click. Okay, and now we have to wait for that button to be visible again. So for that we can just put a, let's just try to put a if object exists condition, right? So we select the application and select the object again, and only keep the properties that we kept for our click operation, just to keep the search consistent throughout all the commands. Okay, and that's it. And we're going to wait for, let's say, around let's say 60 seconds, close to a minute. So anyway, that's the maximum cutoff time that we have kept. The operation is going to finish before that, so that's the cutoff that we're going to keep, 60 seconds. So we're going to wait for 60 seconds for the button to exist, and when the button is visible again, that's when we want to capture this value. So right now it says 0, but when the operation is done, it will say the download speed, right? So I'm just going to capture this field. So let's just do a capture of this number, okay, and store that to, let's make it a div. HTML ID is div speed details. Let's just keep that and remove the frame and path, all these things, and let's just do a get property of there should be a HTML inner text over here. Right click, copy that and paste it over here, right? And now we assign the value to prompt assignment. Okay, now once the value is assigned, we're just going to do a message box outside the if condition. So I'm going to collapse this and put a message box outside the if condition and just say prompt assignment, right? Now let's see how this works. So it's a very simple code. I click on the button, wait for the button to exist again because the button is gone. Now we go for 60-second max cutoff time, but it's going to happen before that. And once it happens again, I'm going to take the download speed which comes on the page, and then I'm going to just prompt it out. That's it. That's the use case. So the page is ready and the code is ready. Let's run this. Okay, so it's getting deployed to the system. Now it clicks on the button, animation starts, but it did not wait for the object to exist again, right? It directly gave the message box while the operation is still running. Why did that happen? It was supposed to wait for this button to be button to exist again, right? But that did not happen. It directly gave the message box 0 because it never captured anything, right? It did not even wait for the button to come back, right? Why did that happen? Now let's just do a, oops, sorry, I clicked it in. Let me just refresh this page. Hopefully that works. Yes. Okay, let me just right click on this button and do a inspect element, and I see that this is the button type, right? That's the class and that's the ID, right? The value says run test. Now what happens when the button is clicked? The button is not visible over here, but if you see the code, this button is still part of the HTML DOM, the document object model, right? So that's why when we do a if recorder exist condition, when we check this button to exist in the HTML page, it always returns true because the button is never gone. It's just not visible. That's it, right? So if you see the style property, it says display inline block, and the moment we click on run, it says display none. See, the only thing that is changing is the style property. The button is still very much part of the HTML page. So that's why our code is not able to track the visibility toggling of the button. So how to handle that? Okay, so let me just try to play around with the properties a little bit, and let's see. We have selected DOM XPath already. Let me just select the is visible property over here, right? So if the DOM XPath is this, and if the visible property says true, if both the conditions true, only then we know that the button has been visible again, right? Because we know that on click of the button is going to disappear, and it will going to come back once the download speed is completed, the speed test is completed. So in the if condition, we are going to check both these conditions. We're going to check for the DOM XPath, and we're going to check for is visible true. Okay, and we're going to wait for 60 seconds for that. Let's see if it works now. Let me just refresh this page. Done. The page is ready, the code is ready. Let's run this. Okay, so if you see that even though it clicked on the button again, but then also it did not wait for the operation to complete, it directly gave the 0, which means that that combination is also not working, right? Now let's try to do something else. Let me just remove this is visible. Okay, and let me just use a different property altogether. So we're going to use DOM XPath, and we're going to use this outer HTML, which gives the entire HTML code of the button, which also includes the btn class and id and everything, right? So let's just try to use this. So once the button comes back, let me just capture this button when it comes back, right? So basically what I'm looking for is that style that gets attached to that button when it comes back on the screen. So remove the HTML ID, HTML has frame, HTML type button, path. We don't need these things. We already have the DOM XPath, and let's just keep the outer HTML. And when we go to the right, we see this style display inline block statement. So that is the style that is getting added when the button reappears on the screen, right? So we're going to use the DOM XPath and the outer HTML. That combination we're going to use, right? And we're going to wait for 60 seconds. Let's just try it now. Save the code, and on the page, just refresh the page to bring it back to the original state. And the page is ready, the code is ready. Let's run. So the button is clicked, and now the page is basically calculating the download speed. But if you see, the bot is waiting for that to happen, right? The bot is waiting for that to complete, because we have added, along with the DOM XPath, we have also added the HTML properties, right, using the outer HTML value. And once the button is visible again, that outer HTML search criteria gets satisfied. It finds a button with that styling option added to it, and that's when it gives the value 37, which is my download speed. So basically what I'm trying to explain to you with this use case is, depending on the HTML property, depending on how the page behaves, you need to select the right combination of properties over here. It could be the DOM XPath and outer HTML, or it could be the DOM XPath and the visible property over here, right? It depends. So at this point, it seemed like these two combination worked fine, okay? But for a different website or a different use case, the combination might be different. So it depends on the behavior of the website, which combination you need to use. Okay, now let's just try something else. Let me just go back to the currency converter website and use this to show you something else. Sometimes it happens that in a certain website, the DOM XPath is not uniquely identifiable, right? The DOM XPath does get captured, but it's not a unique identifier for that particular object to identify that object. So in those cases, you can also use something called crow path. Okay, so you click on crow path, and it basically, oops, I'm not sorry why it's vibrating like that. Let me just close this and try to capture a different, maybe this. Okay, so when you do inspect element, you can go for crow path. Now this crow path gives either a relative x path or a absolute x path, right? The relative x path is basically starting from a certain control, and traversing through the page to that control that you're looking for, right? It's basically keeping a certain control as a relative, identifier, and then with respect to that, it identifies that current control that you're trying to look for. Absolute XPath starts from the scratch. It starts from the HTML body and goes all the way to the object that we are trying to capture. So whenever you are not able to find the unique identifier using recorder capture in the DOM XPath property, right? In the DOM XPath property, at this point, this is a unique identifier because it identifies the ID of that button, right? In some cases, for some HTML pages, it's not possible. So in those cases, you can use the CrowPath add-on tool to get the relative XPath or the absolute XPath of that particular page, which leads up to that control, and you can use that. Now, I have already pasted the link in the description of how you can add this CrowPath to your Google Chrome as an add-on, but you can just search on Google Chrome for CrowPath for Chrome, okay, and it will give this link where you can go ahead and add the CrowPath extension for your Chrome, right? So that will help you in cases where your DOM XPath is not properly identifiable. So in today's session, we looked at few tips and tricks, which can be implemented while doing a recorder capture for UI automation. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. Please try out these options and let me know in the comment section which worked for you and which did not. And if required, I'll definitely post a video for you. Thank you.